Wow. Look at this! A video covering the latest chapter of I Can't Choose a Childhood Friend within only a few weeks of the chapter releasing? Earl is working some black magic, I tell you what.
For now I sacrifice both magicians to summon the sorcerer of dark magic!
I actually almost considered waiting for the next chapter and start making these videos every 2 chapters, but it is looking like things are starting to pick up plot-wise. So doing 2 chapters might be too much to cover for a single video going in the future. So for now, we'll stick with just doing 1. I'm Moonlight150, and this is my overview of the latest I Can't Choose a Childhood Friend manga chapter, Chapter 8, Let's Just Stay Friends.
But we're friends though.
You're right.
Be sure to check out the full release if it's available in your area, and supporting the Scanlation team since it looks like this isn't getting an official English release anytime soon. So they are our only saving grace for being able to read this series. And as always, I won't be going over everything because I encourage you to go read the whole chapter for yourself. Now, time for some bowling! We meet up with the Karens and the newly introduced Aika, and yes, her name is now Aika. I'm not gonna pull the same funny haha joke I did with Shaika/Kumaka in the last video. The chapter establishes her as Aika, and we'll talk about that when it comes up. So, rest in peace Sunka, long live Aika.
Long live the king.
The girls and you are having an after-school date at the bowling alley. But I want to point out the title card here with how it's showing Galka on the right with Optimist, and Aika on the left with Show Off. So, was I wrong this entire time that it's not her obsessive side? It's her show-off side? I think I might like my idea better. But I guess so, because in the recap it says the 4th Karen is something of a show-off. Boy, I can't catch a break with these predictions in any franchise I'm covering. At least I think how my guesses of how the story will break down still seems plausible. Fingers crossed. But it's not all fun and games, as it seems this bowling alley date is also being used to set the ground rules for the challenge that the Karens have made for one another. And they're now discussing how they will determine who the winner will be, to which they settle on the ranking system the school does for the performances and setups. And whoever is higher on the scoreboard wins, where Aika settles on the matchups that the other 3 Karens will be with the rest of the class for their event, and Aika will be doing her own solo performance to stand out. Okay, maybe the show-off aspect of her actually is an accurate description. Then reality sets in for a moment as Himika calls out why our new enemy is hanging out with them on this date, and Galka chimes in saying she invited Aika, probably still in optimistic hopes to have everyone start getting along. And this is where we get the name drop of Aika, to which Aika isn't a fan of. No nicknames, she is just Karen. And to prove it, she pulls out the charm that she shared with you, immediately followed by the other Karens pulling out their charms. These gags are just begging to be an anime. Please let that happen someday. It would be so good. Cut to some more daytime and Yu is off playing tennis with Himika, asking what her honest thoughts are on Aika. And to no surprise, she considers her a bother, for the fact that she is turning everything into a competition, and then she brings in some common sense. Even if they were to lose this wager, what is stopping them from ignoring the bet and continue to date the 3 Karens anyway? To where Yu just says he couldn't do something like that to a Karen, where I agree with Himika here on this one. He really is a bother. And that's what Himika just likes about him, I guess. He's a bother in a good way. Next up we have Kumaka and her take on Aika, saying how she doesn't like that she's such a contrarian and insulting them. And then when asked by Kumaka what does Yu think, he admits that he still likes her, and how he admires her. But at the same time, when she got in his face with that horrifying image from the last chapter, and said that he hasn't changed one bit, that ticked him off, saying how he has changed since meeting all the Karens. And when he was confronted by Aika, he reverted, which he didn't like. Okay, you, buddy. It's good that you realize you have grown and changed for the better, but it's been like a week since you've done all this changing. It's still fresh. Lastly, we get Galka's take on the whole thing as she and Yu do some swings at the batting cages. And to no surprise with what seems like Galka and Aika being 2 rivals, she can't stand her, saying how Aika has labeled them as enemies since their eyes met, and how it's not fun when you immediately label someone as an enemy. So she's hoping they can win this thing, knock Aika's ego down a peg or 2, so they can all start getting along. And Yu supports this because even though it's fighting a Karen, it's for protecting the other Karens, so he's ready to step up for the ones he's already officially dating. Which makes Galka happy as can be and lunges for a hug, only to be immediately interrupted when she realizes she is probably all sweaty from the batting cages, only for Yu to fumble the innuendo bag yet again, saying that she smells nice like that. Which leaves Galka at a loss for words at what he just said. Damn, this series is just begging to be animated, please. I need these gags in animation. They would work so well. Someone fast-track the series to anime stat. But the awkward silence isn't for long as Aika comes walking by and grabs Yu to take him roller skating. But this turns out to be his first time and she tries to show him how it's done, only for her to slip and Yu to catch her, which leads to the classic rom-com stare between 2 love interests and the girl immediately jumping away, where Yu confronts her about how naturally clumsy she is, both here and with the dancing in class from the last chapter. And Aika Aika wasn't a fan of pointing out her flaws with this giant pouting panel spread, only for you to try to defuse the situation calling it cute that she's kinda clumsy. But the calling of cute isn't saving you as she gets in his face, needing him to say, "Karen is cool," where once he says it, she turns into a giggling schoolgirl.
The next day,
And would you look at that, this series is still being consistent with keeping track of its timeline, with no weird jumps in time, unlike other manga series that I know. And we are greeted with the 3 Karens in maid outfits, which is too much for you to handle mentally. It looks like their class has settled on doing a maid cafe because there are no original ideas in manga anymore. But in a twist, it seems the class has already given up on trying to even do good in the rankings, saying they don't need to do any more work than just show up for the event. Which is not what our gang wants to hear, as they need to do good in the rankings because of the bet with Aika. Seeing the predicament, Aika begins to gloat at how much he's pretty much won the bet now, and takes off. After being told to sit tight, Yu takes off to talk to Aika. After a bit of wandering around, Yu finds Aika up on the roof practicing her performance, where Yu commends her for practicing even though she's pretty much got this bet on lock. And Aika asks if he's come to surrender the bet already and just pick her, but this wouldn't be an arc if he did that. So of course he assures her that he and the other Karens will do their best too, that he isn't the giving up type. Hearing this, Aika gives one final push to try to convince him of otherwise, to just be with her and to keep their dynamic of her being the cool one and him being the uncool one, and to be friends just like they used to be back then. Only for her to realize that she's laying on top of him and immediately jumps off. What happened to that confidence of being on top of him from the last chapter? But seeing that nothing is changing his mind, Aika decides that she'll just prove it to him and everyone else how much better she is. And because this is Yu, he gives her his full support, and saying that he'll help with anything she needs. Saying he wants to be there for any Karen and heads on out. Only for us to all find out that that was an act and that he was internally freaking out from how forward Aika was being. And possibly a new kink was unlocked.
Shame.
But he forces his way out of his fantasy and steels himself, saying how he likes how he has changed because of the Karens, and that he wants to change more. Then after hearing the latest gossip from people who are excited that Aika is going to be performing at the school festival, that becomes all the inspiration he needs to get pumped up and put in all of his effort to winning this bet. As he steps back into class with inspirational speech in tow, only for them to ponder if that's how you actually do an inspirational speech, and it turns out the Karens have already been hard at work trying to make the maid cafe even better. After that bit of reassurance and a hug for all, they get to work as Yu ponders what the stakes are regarding the school festival, and we're left with a cliffhanger before the big competition. This chapter has a lot of calm before the storm type of energy, and it's a great way to have some tension in this series, even if it's just a simple bet between some jealous girlfriends using a school festival as a backdrop. It's just with this being a monthly series, any kind of tension is kind of lost before the next chapter is even out. But I do have some other things I want to talk about. For one thing, I love all the development that the Karens got. It's nice to see them out on a date, and even some one-on-one time with you. We even get to see a little bit more to these individual Karens, and even though they're all technically the same person, but because of their dominant personality trait, they are all handling this situation differently. So it's developing these Karens even further, which is nice to see so we don't see them all as one note. Especially Galka, who we got to see what happens when her optimism is really put to the test. And I was right in thinking her and Aika were going to be rivals, and I'm sure that will continue even past this event. But I do have one problem. What happened to the whole time limit set by the charm? That was such a big deal with Galka in the beginning, and even Kumaka for a bit, that he had to convince them to accept his feelings, otherwise they would Thanos turn into dust in the wind within 24 hours. And yet here we are waiting days until the school festival. Either the author forgot his own premise, or we're gonna get a gag after the festival where we find out there was no time limit and the charm was messing with them or something. And yeah, the other aspect I'm not too fond of, which the manga itself has already pointed out, why are they taking this bet so seriously? Like, just because Aika wins that you have to break up your whole relationship and never see them again, even though you all attend the same class, live in the same home, etc, etc. I get it. It's drama for a manga, and teenagers at that. Teenagers take this stuff seriously.
How dare you!
But I'm in Himika's camp, just ignore it, it's too much of a bother. But that is it for the calm before the storm.
I think it's raining.
No, it's not.
I peed on myself.
What?
I peed on myself. I peed on myself.
Next chapter, we see the school festival and see how this whole thing shakes out. Will my prediction be right? Or do you have your own idea of how it will play out? Leave them in the comments below. I've been Moonlight150, and I will see you all next month for Chapter 9. See you all then. So they are our only saving grace for being able to read this series. So they are I hate English.